The last race must have been a delight for Red Bull fans to watch, as it was one of the most dominant performances from the team for the past 10 years. A 1-2 finish and the fastest lap saw the Bulls take maximum points without breaking a sweat, with Max making the rest of the grid look like amateurs. McLaren's also managed to score points from both drivers, however it seems that Daniel's $24 million payout is the least of their worries this season. First, Red Bull Racing hails landmark victory, from 13th place to 3rd place in 8 laps, and 1st place after 10 more laps. You don't see many drivers so irresistible. If Verstappen wins the title, this will be his most memorable race, the one where he showed everyone that he's the champion with no questions asked. Was this his most successful weekend ever? Just ask the person. I think so, he said. This year, it's been a lot of fun to drive the car around here. Team boss Christian Horner called it one of the most dominant performances we've had as a team since either 2010 or 2013, which was the team's best time. There are two ways to measure how much Red Bull Racing is better than Ferrari. The first is that the RB18 turned out to be a great fit for this track. Its aerodynamic package was good enough to find a balance between the fast corners and the long straights without losing too much in either. Horner thought that the other was the technical directive that the FIA put out this weekend to close loopholes that let teams run their cars with floor planks that could bend. Any team that used the gray area strategy would have had to raise their car's ride height to make up for it. However, Red Bull Racing has been running a much higher car in recent races as its aerodynamic philosophy has changed, while Ferrari has still been using its super low floor to make its car faster. Leclerc's comments after the race would be consistent with Horner's explanation, even though Ferrari's lack of performance is also a factor. What's strange is that the car seems to be in good shape, Leclerc said. Zandvoort is a very different track with medium speed sweeps that should be better for Ferrari. However, if the Italian team can't at least get back on par with Red Bull Racing, it's hard to see how it can be competitive until the end of the season. Start counting the points. Verstappen didn't just win the Belgian Grand Prix, he also killed the championship race by making his lead so big that we can start counting down the days until he wins his second title. After winning the race and getting a point for having the fastest lap, he was 93 points ahead of Perez and 98 points ahead of Leclerc. With 8 races left, including the sprint race in Brazil, there are still 216 points up for grabs. This is not nearly enough for Perez or Leclerc to hope that their luck will change. The earliest that Verstappen can win the championship is the Singapore Grand Prix, which is just 3 races away. However, for that to happen, Verstappen would have to win 3 races, and Perez would have to quit 3 times, which is unlikely. But the second championship has quickly become the most likely outcome at the Japanese Grand Prix. Verstappen only needs to beat Perez by 19 points in the next 4 races to win the title at Suzuka. This means that if Verstappen wins the next 4 races and Perez comes in second, that would be enough. The Dutchman only needs to beat Leclerc by 14 points to win. 2 wins and 2 second places would be enough to take Leclerc out of the running for the championship and end his stumbling first-time run. It's a big change from last year, when the last race in Abu Dhabi was a nail-biter. Even though Ferrari's almost weekly mistakes have given Verstappen a mountain of points, the Dutchman has clearly moved into a higher gear this season. Only the fact that he started the season a little bit slowly while the Red Bull Racing car found its groove made it seem like Leclerc might be able to beat him in 2022. However, Leclerc's 8 wins in the last 11 races have crushed Ferrari's hopes of a glorious return to title glory. Instead, Verstappen is on the rise, and it's fitting that he should start the countdown to his second championship with the most dominant win of his career. Ferrari's risky gamble underlines it has nothing to lose. It wouldn't be a Formula One Grand Prix without some pressure on Ferrari's strategy department. A late decision to stop Leclerc for soft tires in a futile attempt to get a point for fastest lap made headlines when it moved Fernando Alonso ahead of the Monaco driver as he rejoined the track. It must have been frustrating for Leclerc, who told the team he didn't want to risk a late stop for a single point. Even though he got the place back, he was later caught speeding in a pit lane and dropped a spot in the final order. His best lap time is 0.6 seconds slower than that of Verstappen, but Mattia Binotto said that taking the risk at the last minute was brave, and he's right. Given how bad the championship picture is and how likely it is that the title is already over, every risk has almost no downside to its slightly higher upside. If Ferrari isn't going for it, there's not much point in showing up at all, and Carlos Sainz did a good job, even though he started on the less popular soft compound and took a chance on the hard compound late in the race. Even though the tires were different by 4 laps, it was enough to beat George Russell for the last spot on the podium. Hamilton's wretched weekend compounds Mercedes' misery. When deciding who the biggest loser of the weekend was, it's hard to look past Lewis Hamilton. It was a disappointing weekend for Mercedes all around. round. The Briton was very upset that the W13 didn't get pole position on Saturday, but for a brief moment on Sunday afternoon, he could see Carlos Sainz's rear wing and may have even imagined taking the lead from the Spaniard, even if only for a short time. But that dream didn't even last 7 turns. Fernando Alonso was in second place, so Lewis Hamilton went around the outside of the Spaniard's car and quickly shut the door. His right back wheel hit the front right of the Alpine. This caused the Mercedes to fly into the air and land with a heavy thud, breaking his gearbox and forcing him to leave the race. Alonso was furious that he had lost his chance to stay in second place, so he yelled at his teammates over the team radio. He said, "What a This guy knows only how to drive backwards." The steward said Hamilton was to blame for the crash, but they didn't do anything because it happened on the first lap. Hamilton took responsibility, but he was surprised by Alonso's harsh words. It felt like Mercedes' whole season was summed up this weekend. After a good weekend last time, there was hope that the results would be good, but the car was no match for its competitors. It was so bad that in qualifying, both Alpine drivers beat it. This weekend, there was an overwhelming sense of defeat in the paddock. It was as if the team had finally realized that this year's car won't do anything good in the last 8 races. This may not go far enough. Finally, McLaren loses further ground in the battle for 4th. McLaren has failed to get both cars into the points for the 3rd time this season when both cars have seen the checkered flag. It's the end of a tough week for the team, which began with the expensive firing of Daniel Ricciardo and the $24 million payout, and continued with the looming threat of a hearing by the Contract Recognition Board about its efforts to hire Oscar Piastri. McLaren qualified on the edge of the top 10, and both Alpine drivers went into Q3 with confidence. In the race, McLaren wasn't fast enough in a straight line to get into the top 10, and Alpine had a small chance of making the podium early on, but they ended up 5th and 7th. It gave the French team a 20-point lead over McLaren for 4th place in the constructors' standings, 115-95, and Daniel Ricciardo said it was clear what McLaren was doing. "It's definitely hard and tricky," he said. "As we've seen, a big weekend can definitely make a big change, but we feel like a big weekend is probably just around the corner. I feel like they've been getting faster over the last few weekends." Alpine, on the other hand, has shown again that not only does it have a faster car, but also one that can be used in more situations. At the beginning of this year, we had an idea of what kind of track would be best for our car, and this was one of them, said Alpine boss Otmar Schaffnauer. "But it looks like we're pretty competitive even at the kind of tracks we didn't think would be best for our car, and that's what worries McLaren the most. Theoretically, a flowing track like Zandvoort and the next 2 races in Japan and Brazil would be good for its car, but its strengths are no longer enough to beat Alpine's consistent level of performance. A step backwards in coming." That's all the time we got for today. Comment below what you think of Red Bull's dominant performance and if they will continue the same trends till the end of the season.